Welcome, friends of the Greasy Shop Rag. Today we're going to take a look at a Husqvarna 128L string trimmer. The customer complaint is that he can't get it started. So I did mess around with this thing a little bit, and I was able to get it started. And I ran it for quite a while, and I had some pretty serious problems with it. And I'm going to start it up here in just a second and show you what I was experiencing. And I couldn't make this problem go away with any carburetor adjustments. Let's take a look. That's a lot of fuel. Yeah. I rotated this thing while it was running to try and get any puddles of fuel that might have been in the muffler to get them to come out. I actually dried everything, try and get the fuel out, and it just keeps flooding. It's another little bit of an unusual problem with a burnt hole in the middle of the air filter. Maybe some backfiring going on. So we definitely have a fuel problem. Guy couldn't get it started, and I don't think it was because of his starting procedure. I don't think he flooded it. I think that something else might be going on here inside the carburetor, and we'll take a look at that. And here's a shot you don't often see. I've got an extension on the side of my workbench that has a clamp on it. It actually extends out farther than that. But that's the way I hold a pole saw or a string trimmer steady on the bench. If you don't have a long bench, it might be something you want to consider doing. So we take the two 8mm nuts off and remove the air filter housing and expose our carburetor. I'm going to dump the fuel out of here. Now the thing seemed to run fine on this fuel. It just was flooding very badly. And the color and the smell of the fuel, I have no concerns about that at all. We're going to look at the fuel filter and the fuel lines. You know, but a plugged fuel filter isn't going to make it flood. But we're going to go through this whole fuel system. And when I tried to remove the filter, the line broke, so that settles that. There is a Z-bend on the throttle linkage. We're just going to open the throttle a little bit and pull that cable out of the hole on the carburetor for the linkage. And then we're going to try and pry these old fuel lines off the fittings on the carburetor. And they're stuck on there pretty good. But we got a handy dandy scrunch we will overcome. There we go. We have harvested one carburetor. Took a look inside the intake. The intake side of the piston skirt looked good. So, carburetor stands. I've had a lot of people ask me about this carburetor stand. I only recently made these. It works really good. I mean, instead of just working off of the bench or a dirty bench, I can work on a carburetor on this stand. I can rotate it around. I can put it on here in different orientations. I've got a magnet on the back that initially the magnet was just so I could stick it to the side of the toolbox. I have since come to discover that it's not a bad place to store the screws when you take them out of the carburetor. So here you can see that, you know, if you want to work on an angle or whatever, just put it in one post. Some carbs aren't drilled parallel. The holes are on an angle, so you could put it in one hole and then end up having the carburetor level while it sits on the stand. Couple of 1/8 inch rods is all this is that are sticking out of here. And you'll see that, you know, I put the screw right there on the magnet. So why am I talking so much about the carb stand? Well, like I said, a lot of people have been asking where they can get one. And now you can get one in my eBay store. And I'll have a link in the description of how to get to that. Now check this out. Screw. Here's the top cover. Bam! Like magic. I don't know. That couldn't have been better. That magnet's kind of strong there, and it just grabbed that cover, and it's sticking to the side of the magnet right now. So back to our repair. You know, I'm not finding anything wrong here. That metering diaphragm is not holding the needle open. At least it did not appear to be. You know, maybe the needle has got some junk underneath it and it's just being held open. You know, maybe the adjustment screws are backed way out. Well, I think I'm 2 turns on this one and maybe a turn and a half or 2 turns on the other one. That is not open far enough or rich far enough to make all that fuel come out of the exhaust like it did. There's just something going on with this thing, and it's not obvious. So what you got to do now at this point is decide, what are you going to do? You can spend a half an hour digging into it, or is the carburetor cheap enough that you're just going to replace it and move on? Or are you going to look somewhere else and think maybe it's not the carburetor at all? You know, if I hadn't cleared the flooded situation, I wouldn't have known that this is definitely a continuing problem from the carburetor. Because on the surface it seems like, well, he's got a new spark plug in here. Maybe the thing was just had a fouled plug and he flooded it. But like I said, even after clearing the flooded condition, it flooded again while it was running. So, got to be something in the carburetor. And I've made the decision to, and that was kind of a crappy shot there, but the cylinder was clean. Not scored, I should say. And I forgot to hit the record button, and you didn't get to see me putting the fuel lines and a new fuel filter in, but you can watch any one of my other videos and see that pretty much. So the carburetor comes with this gasket. I didn't have to order this separate. We'll put the new gasket on here. And we got our new carburetor. So I know that the line closest to the gas cap is the return line. And I know that the fitting closest to the primer bulb is the return line. So those two will go together. And then this line here with the filter is going to go on the other fitting of the carburetor. And you can confirm this when you put fuel in it and just watch the fuel move through the lines. On the return line that's closest to the primer bulb, you should see the fuel moving from the carburetor back to the tank. If you're not seeing that, then maybe you got the line switched. Okay, we got our lines on. Now we're going to put our little throttle cable with the Z-bend back into the linkage. I open up the throttle a little bit and just drop it in there. Push the carb up flush, do a function check, looks good. And now we'll put our air filter adapter back on. And a couple of nuts. Just snug these down pretty decent. You don't have to get carried away. Okay, we're going to put the same fuel back in. Didn't look like there's anything wrong with it. Why waste it? Plus, if it runs on this fuel, I know that I didn't have a fuel problem before, even though I don't suspect fuel of ever causing a flooding condition. But, well, I take that back. I mean, if it doesn't run and there's water in it, you know, it's going to flood because it won't start and you're pulling and pulling and pulling. So let's put this thing back together. We'll get the plug in here and we're going to see if it runs. I don't show you whether or not it's flooding at the exhaust, but I can tell you that it did not. So that's all I got for you on the Husqvarna 128L string trimmer that was wouldn't start due to flooding. Thanks for watching. Later.